welcome. So if this is your first time on this channel, you're in for a treat because today is something different. I actually have an entire guest for you, and this guest is going to talk about the fashion industry, answer questions that I have that I think you guys have too. Will be very interesting. This is going to be part 1 of 3 videos, and I'm going to let her introduce herself and take it from there.
Hi guys, my name is Gloria Amosun. I am a fashion creative. I have a bachelor's in microbiology and a master's in contemporary fashion design from the International Fashion Academy in Paris. I freelance and I also work as a consultant in creative design and strategy.
So can you tell us 3 fun facts? One about fashion, one about trends, one about textile.
Fashion is exciting, like we all know it to be, but then fashion is also an actual industry, just like pharmaceuticals or banking, and it has it's such a big industry. So fun fact, fashion is not all about clothes. It's way more than that. The clothes they're the smallest thing in the end. Secondly, people think that all natural textile is sustainable, but then that's not necessarily true. The fact that a lot of brands starting up feel like they must always design clothing or accessories according to the trends, but then that's not necessarily true. Trends are not just what's happening right now. Platforms like WGSN, which is very great for designers, would show you what's going to be in trend in the future, and that's why we have concepts like trend forecasting. So if you're a designer or you're starting a business and you feel like you need to start with what's in trend, I would kind of discourage you, because in the end that thing is going to fade away. People just generally think that the fashion industry is all glam, like it has to be oh, the devil wears Prada. But then that's not the truth. In fact, there are some people in the fashion industry that are not even
in touch with the fashion.
They're not in touch with fashion, because in the end there's finance, there's strategy, there's branding, there's so much. And I think that's one of the biggest myths that should be busted, especially for young people who want to get into the fashion industry simply because it's glam. You might not miss what you're looking for when you get there. I'd say that first of all, the industry is super large, like I said. So there's so many parts. There's clothing industries, like there's the clothing industry within the fashion industry, which has to do with, clothing manufacturers, brands, and all of that. There is creative agencies, which take care of advertising. They take care of campaigns and all of that, and then there's the entertainment part that also takes care of news, fashion style, fashion
bits
weeks,
we get to see and fall in love with.
Vogue, basically. But then all of them are working together to kind of achieve the big picture that we know to be fashion. So I'd say that the structure would have to be per sector, because there's so many sectors within the industry.
Fashion tech, how do you define that?
For me, I feel like the main aim of fashion tech is actually making fashion more sustainable. It cuts down some processes, it cuts down, so many different things. For instance, in designing a garment, if I were to design a garment and make a sample 5 years ago, and I want to send the sample to, maybe I have a production company in Romania or in China, I was going to, actually make that sample and all of that. But now we have software like Clo3D, where you can make the actual samples in 3D form and send it to the manufacturers, and then you can have your clothing made in bulk. And there's also fashion tech with regards to the actual clothing. And some little things that we don't even recognize as fashion tech is actually fashion tech, because tech has been used in simplifying or modifying the fabrics. So something like thermal wear, where thermal wear that makes you feel cool when it's hot and warm when it's cold, that's also part of fashion tech. Quality is quality, but I'd also say that quality varies depending on the kind of material you're looking at. Also, sometimes the things that we think are quality are not necessarily quality, because sometimes you feel like, oh yeah, this fabric, because it's hard, you know. So
do you know, I was gonna say that, for example, for me, if I buy an item and it's cotton, right, and it's really thick, for me, that's really good quality because it's thick. And so it means maybe then in my head, it means it's going to last.
And I believe that quality is also linked with sustainability, right? So if I have a perfect, great, nicely farmed cotton, nicely spun yarn, you know, they make this beautiful shirt for me, but then the dyes that were used in making the shirts are not necessarily sustainable. Don't just look at the clothing. Actually check labels before you buy your clothes. Check where it was made. Check what materials were used to make it. Sometimes from little things like that, you might be able to find out, okay, yeah, this is actually quality. And more expensive also doesn't mean it's more quality.
For example, I did a try out of naked items from the Reborn collection, which is supposed to be the pledge towards sustainability. And in that, there are pieces that were 55% organic cotton and the rest is not organic. And immediately I'm thinking, does that count as sustainable? And so what are your thoughts on something like that? Wow.
We have to be honest. You can't achieve 100% sustainability yet. We're just not there yet. If you see it somewhere, it's probably a lie. Even the entire clothes can be 100% sustainable. But then there's so many other things. There's labor conditions. Was that sustainable? There's Airmiles. There's carbon monoxide. How did you transport it to, you know, in terms of delivery? If you didn't use an electric car, that has reduced, you know, the amount of sustainability. So I feel like for something like that, I would actually appreciate it because I'm all for transparency.
How do you make something last? How do you know it's going to be long lasting?
The way to make something last is by caring for it well, right? And the only way to care for it well is by caring for it the way it was intended to be cared for. And the only way to know how it was intended to be cared for is by reading the labels. Okay, so
I always preach, if the label is above you, leave it. If you know you can't sprinkle it in gold dust and hang it in pure clean air, leave it.
Honestly, because if you bought a Hermes bag and you would care for it the way they said to care for it because you spent a lot of money on it, right? But then you go to some other brand that's not as expensive as Hermes and then you just don't care for it the way it ought to be cared for. While I know that there are some things that are just bad quality. First of all, some brands are just not being transparent. You cannot be 100% sustainable. And if you're telling me you're offering me something organic, you have to tell me how it is organic, right? So many times, and this goes to looking at the labels again, because they've called it organic, because it is organic in some sense, but then on the labels, they've actually told you exactly what it is.
To what degree?
But just because you don't read it, you feel like, oh yeah, these people cheated me. They technically didn't. Another thing I would like to say is the way fashion works, right? Production cost is based on quantity. The quality of the materials is always involved, but then the cost of production in general is always based on quantity. So price per unit is always less when it's more. So sometimes, especially for fast fashion brands, I wouldn't say I know how much, but I've seen from my research how much effort some fast fashion brands are actually putting in to become more sustainable, which is great. I know like H&M is trying, Naked is trying as well, you know. But then sometimes the things are cheaper, not necessarily because they're not sustainable, but just because fast fashion is fast, right? They produce a lot of stuff at the same time. And the truth is also, the same places that some fast fashion brands produce their clothes, it's the same place that some luxury brands also produce their products. So sometimes when you see stuff that are, you know, at a giveaway price, just factor in read the label first, of course, to see if you're being sold, you know, dupes, but then also factor in the fact that these people are making stuff on a larger scale and it will just naturally be cheaper.
Wow, cool. So we are gonna head over there and have a part 2 of this conversation and delve into, you know, meatier bits of this whole conversation. Join us next week, and that will be Sunday, 6 p.m. UK time. For now, peace out.
Bye.
Bye.